Welcome to another week of Salute Your Sports. Common Enchev here with Tom Castleman. Drew Brackett on a bye this week, but we'll have some great basketball talk without him. The faces of the NBA putting on a show at All-Star Weekend. LeBron hitting the game winner and talking about his future. Stephen Curry hitting 15 threes, scoring 50 points. Are you kidding me? More Hoops Talk 2, CP3 going down with an injury. How does that affect the Suns? But we'll have a lot more as well from around the sports world. Looking forward to a fun show today. It's going to be a good one, Tom.
Absolutely. College football playoff also coming out with some pretty significant news through the year 2025. And of course, the Winter Olympics just wrapping up in China this year. So we'll be touching on some of the best stories. I have one that just tickled me in all the fun ways. I can't wait to get to this one later on in the show. But of course, we'll start off with the NBA All-Star Weekend. As you mentioned, Common, Steph Curry, Stephen Curry with an amazing performance. It's an all-star game, so grain of salt to be applied here. But exactly how impressive was this performance for you?
Well, I think obviously it would be more impressive if he had 15 threes and 50 points in a regular season game. With that said, though, I still think it was pretty impressive. I mean, it is an all-star game record. No one ever has made that many threes. He was just 2 points shy of the record, the 52 points that Anthony Davis had in 2017. I know some of those threes were open looks, but if you watched the game, I actually went back and rewatched the game because I was at work during the game. I caught a little bit of the beginning, but I went back and rewatched the whole game the next day. And some of them were from like almost half court. Some of them were off the dribble. I mean, these were unbelievable threes. You hit an open three from almost half court, you deserve a shout out. And he was making them time after time after time. And you see this 3-point shootout, like where guys are getting wide open looks and they still miss like almost half of them in the 3-point shootout. So Steph knocking down 15 threes. I think he was 15 of 27, but he was like 15 of 21 at one point. Then he cooled off a little bit. I know he had a couple of half court ones he threw up just for fun. But I thought it was very impressive. And I listened back to the broadcast. They had Reggie Miller, Allen Iverson as a guest was on there, and they were having an incredible time. I think Oscar Robertson, they showed that it's one of my favorite like images in All-Star game history. Oscar Robertson just having like a laugh on his face, like what is going on as Curry's making all these threes. So I would say pretty impressive. I think it is an accomplishment that has never been done before. And Steph Curry is Steph Curry, man. It was such a show watching him play. I'm thankful to be watching him, thankful to be a part of this generation. I say very impressive.
So I'm going to go a little bit facile on this one because, as you know, journalism major here. Math is not necessarily our strong suit, but I'm going to try a little bit of a something here. According to basketballreference.com, the NBA is averaging 109.2 points per game this season. This year, the All-Star game scored a total of 323 points, which is 296% higher than what the average NBA score is. So in reversing the math, what we're kind of coming up with here is that Curry scored the equivalent of 17 points in a regular season NBA game. I say hardly impressive.
Oh, okay. A lot of stats there. He did play less minutes too. Keep that in mind for the All-Star game.
Sure.
You're not accounting for those statistics. And part of the reason why there's a lot more points, absolutely, lack of defense is part of it, but part of it, quite honestly, Tom, is the fact that they don't really care to wind the shot clock down. I think pace of play in the All-Star game is through the roof. There's no such thing as waiting till the last second to jack up a shot. Like the shot clock does not matter. So that is part of it. I still think it's impressive because we've never seen anyone do it. I mean, if it was that easy, we'd have guys hitting 15 threes. I know you're going for something different. I know you're having fun. And it's probably a little bit less impressive than I'm saying. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But I went back and watched that highlight about a dozen times on YouTube, like the 3.5-minute video. So that tells you how cool it is.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't even know if half of his shots were contested, which kind of like part of what plays into my mindset as well. But
deep threes though, Tom. He was hitting some
yeah,
threes from like, I mean, he was basically like, like the 3-point line and the half court line. About half of his
no, I
threes
saw.
were like halfway between those two lines.
No, like it is impressive stuff. It's just the fact that it is with an exhibition that to me it's kind of like this is more like it's a step and a half above being in just like an empty gym, being in practice, kind of goofing around. Like he's absolutely wildly talented to be able to do that because I know I for a fact would not be able to. But it's just the
I
fact
don't
that
think
like
so.
it's a glorified practice almost until they get kind of toward the end of the game where it gets really, really contentious there.
We
Which
talking
could be
about
something
practice, not the game, not the game. We talking about practice, Tom,
practice.
not the game that you go out and die for every day. We talking about practice.
No, nobody was dying for that game.
Okay, that's that much we can agree on. I will say at the end of the game, though, they did play hard, but that was at the end of the game.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, kind of like transitioning then from the exhibition game into the real game. Do you see this leading as a bit of a hot streak for Curry? We know that shooters in particular are one of the, in the NBA are one of the streakiest things where you're either really, really on or you're really, really off. It kind of falls into that hot hand fallacy a little bit. Are we going to see a little bit better play out of Steph Curry, at least in terms of results, as we come out of the All-Star break?
Absolutely. Maybe I'm a little biased. Maybe I'm a Curry guy, but I think this is going to lead to the floodgates opening open. I mean, I think he is a rhythm shooter. He sees the ball go in the hoop. I know it's crazy to think that obviously NBA players are very confident. Curry's very confident. But when you're making the shot, these are human beings, Tom. You have a lot more confidence when the ball is going in. I don't care who you are. You can be Michael Jordan, Stephen Curry, Kobe Bryant. You say like, oh, yeah, I always believe it's going to go in. But when it's going in a lot more than when it's not, there is a sort of difference, confidence that it makes. And I think this is actually interesting because as amazing as Stephen Curry is, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, Stephen Curry has absolutely been great in the playoffs. I think he got robbed of a finals MVP the year Iguodala won it. But quite frankly, he has been a little bit better in the regular season than the postseason. And you can't make shots every single moment of every single season. You are going to run into a dry spell at some point. I actually think it's better for Curry to have his dry spell here in the sort of middle third of the season. He started off really hot. He's cooled off the last 6 weeks or so. I think he's going to be hot down the stretch for the rest of the season, and he's going to be hot when the playoffs come around. I think he got those bad ones out of the way, and I do think this is going to help get him going. I think he's also on sort of I'm calling this right now, Tom. I'm going to call this right now. I know this is not a very bold prediction, but it is somewhat bold, and it's a common NCHEF prediction. It is now Tuesday, February 22nd, 5:02 p.m. Remember this pick, Tom. We are on a Stephen Curry tour to do everything he hasn't achieved. This man has achieved almost anything you can on the basketball court. He is an NBA All-Star MVP now. That's one of the things he hadn't achieved. He's a 2-time MVP, a 3-time champion, twice won the three-point contest, even led the league in steals in a season, a 50, 40, 90 guy, a 2-time scoring champ. The only things he hadn't done was All-Star Game MVP and NBA Finals MVP. I say he takes this rhythm of the All-Star Game MVP and he carries it forward and wins the NBA Finals MVP this season. Curry dominates in the playoffs. He dominates in the finals. The Warriors win the NBA Finals, and Curry has now been an NBA MVP, All-Star Game MVP, and Finals MVP, solidifies himself as a top 10 NBA player of all time when he does it at the end of the season. So a couple bold things, top 10 all-time Stephen Curry, NBA Finals MVP this season. Trust in the shooter when he's hot, and he is going to be hot, hot, hot the rest of the season.
Well, that's certainly a lot packed in there. Not as fervently, but I am inclined to agree with you. If anything, excuse me, I think it's more that these two things are going to coincide he had a really good game at the All-Star game, and I think he'll come out playing really, really well at the All-Star break. But I think that's going to be more a factor of just kind of resting up a little bit. Klay Thompson has not been, back to his full self. There have been a lot of other injuries. Draymond has been out for a bit for the Warriors. So Steph's kind of had to carry a little bit more of the load, which, I mean, these are prime conditioned athletes, no doubt about it. They still get tired. They're still human. They still feel some fatigue. So I think that if anything, having a nice performance where the ball, he's seen the ball go through the hoop, and then just having a couple days off after that to kind of get his legs back under him. He's had a good time. He's had fun at the All-Star game. Now it's time to come out and, like you said, push for that championship. Remind people that this is a team that won 73 games. I know they've changed some pieces around, but this is a team that has a lot of the same pillar players that won 73 games a couple of years ago. And that, they aren't just, Kevin Durant coming by, and that's why they won some championships. Steph, I think, is ready to remind some people just exactly how good, how talented, how skilled that he is. So I think that's what we'll see. Not necessarily because of the All-Star game. I think it's going to be more of the rest, but I think that he's going to come out firing as the second half begins.
Yeah, I think you're more or less right on that. I'm not necessarily saying that because he was hot in the All-Star game, it automatically means he will be hot. I think part of it is, I would argue that it's because he was relatively cold. And by relatively cold, we're talking about Steph Curry standards. I mean, he still has shot the ball fairly well from deep. And this season, it's not like he's putting up Russell Westbrook field goal percentages or anything. But for his high standards, he hasn't shot the ball as well as previous seasons. But I think actually the Warriors are really, really good, and he hasn't had to carry the load maybe as much as, say, last year. I think Jordan Poole has emerged. We've seen a lot of other role players. They're one of those teams that beat you by committee, like Kuminga. They've got Gary Payton, who plays once in a while. I mean, Jordan Poole. They've got such a deep team, and I think the injuries to Draymond, the injuries to Klay, they've actually improved this Warriors team going forward. I think these guys now have gotten that extra playing time. I think Andrew Wiggins, we've seen how much he's improved playing with that team. He was in the All-Star game as well. Shouldn't have started. That's, again, a point for debate. We won't go there again. But I think it's given a lot of these other guys an opportunity to improve and step up. And the way the Warriors won in 2015, before Kevin Durant came, they had guys like Leandro Barbosa coming off the bench. They had Harrison Barnes, a solid role player. He was a starter, but a role player. This current team is built very much like that team. They've got a few clear superstars, a few clear shooters, but they have an excellent bench and they have excellent role players. When they had Durant, they didn't have any role players. And they finally didn't win with him the 1 year because when Thompson or Durant gets hurt, they have no one back there. Right now, they're built to sustain injuries. We haven't even seen James Wiseman hardly play for these guys. He'll be a good piece for rebounding. So I think the Warriors are in good shape, and I think the NBA is definitely in trouble when they have to face Curry and the Warriors the second half of the season, and in particular in the NBA playoffs.
Absolutely. Well, my mouse is not working, Common, so I'm not able to go through the different tabs. So I'm going to have you run the show, and I'm going to go as best I can without notes. So I don't remember off the top of my head. I know we're talking about LeBron. I think that's going to hit the trifecta of we talk Steph, we talk LeBron, and we talk badly about Russell Westbrook. I think that hits the common trifecta that we try to parlay every show.
That's right.
Is LeBron where we're going next on this one?
Yeah. So we'll go LeBron next. Maybe unplug the mouse and try not using the mouse. I would say would be my piece of advice.
My mouse pad isn't working. So I plugged in a remote mouse and that also didn't work. So I have no idea what's going on.
Wow.
Everything else seems to be working. It's just stuck.
Well, it's a good deal that this is a topical show because these next couple topics in particular, you will not need notes at all. You can obviously have your notes. I have a few notes jotted down, but you won't need statistics. We'll talk about the All-Star game more beyond Curry's performance in here a little bit, maybe other little tidbits that stood out. But one of the big things that stood out over the All-Star weekend is that LeBron, by the way, also played pretty good. He hit the game winner in Cleveland, which is his hometown area. He made some comments. He made some comments about playing with his son. We'll talk about that second. But he also said he's not ruling out a return to Cleveland. He said that that's something he may do when his last season or last couple seasons come around. So my question to you is, over under 50% chance we see LeBron suiting up in Cleveland again?
I'd say that's fair. LeBron has made a career out of going, that's a nice team you have over there. How about I come and join it? We saw him do this with the Miami Heat as he, Wade, and Chris Bosh were all up-and-coming players, went there, won a couple of championships. Then Bosh started not being as effective. Wade started having some knee problems. So he said, hey, got Kyrie Irving and a couple of number one picks we can trade for Kevin Love. Let me go back to Cleveland, fulfill a promise that I won there. Things kind of go on the outs with Kyrie Irving a little bit. He says, you know what? I'm going to fly west. I'm going to go to LA. There's Space Jam 2 to be doing. I can kind of like LeBron GM my way into getting Anthony Davis. Let's go and do that. So, of course, I can see him going, yeah, let's go back to Cleveland and win another one, because you've got a lot of good talent there with Darius Garland, Colin Sexton. You've got Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley.
Kevin Love is still there.
Kevin Love is still there in more of like an emeritus role.
And
from
Colin
what I can
Sexton's
tell.
not even playing, and he was like their first round pick.
Yeah,
he's injured.
He's injured now, but definitely a talented player. So yeah, I could absolutely see LeBron. Like I said, he's made a career of signing these like 2-year contracts or 1-year contracts with an option year tacked on, a player option. So he definitely has the flexibility and the maneuverability to go back and play for Cleveland or anyone that looks like they're ready to win a championship. So I absolutely could see him doing that.
And you talk about LeBron GMing, and we'll have more on this talk in the All-Star game, but he's also 5-0 as the GM of the All-Star team. He knows how to pick his players. 5-0. LeBron is a very smart guy. You're almost transitioning to my statement of the week. I'll have more on LeBron and his basketball future, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I actually buy this as well. I think over 50% chance. I will say this, part of it too is the LeBron mind games. Like, he also knows how to get other people to do this. So part of the reason why he's making this statement is that he wants to tell the Lakers, hey, you guys better get some guys around me or I might bolt. Like, he's making a statement to the Lakers front office. And this is in response to, I think, Rob Pelinka making some comment that LeBron is fine with everything going on in LA without LeBron's approval. Granted, that may have been kind of misinterpreted or whatever, how that gets done in sound bites. But yeah. I think if you look at this Lakers roster, you're talking about the trifecta of Russell Westbrook, or Westbrick as I call him, the most overrated player in sports history. I mean, everywhere he goes, the team gets worse. He disrupts rhythm pretty much everywhere he's been. He's not a winner. Russell Westbrook makes your team worse as opposed to better. And we've seen that now. He's finally getting benched in LA. Anthony Davis is a great player, but Anthony Davis has spent as much time being hurt over the last year as he has actually spent on the court. And when he's been on the court, he hasn't played as good as he used to play. Still very good, but Anthony Davis was on par with Giannis maybe 2 years ago. And every time he's played Giannis, he's gotten owned the last year. So obviously Davis is still a great number 2 option, though, for LeBron. But you look at some of these other players. Tom, you remember where I worked in sports? I covered my first job out of college, right?
Yeah, you were in Arkansas.
Northeast Arkansas, Jonesboro, Arkansas. So I was watching the Lakers Jazz game last Wednesday, and the last minute of the game, 2 of the 5 players out there on the roster for the Lakers were guys who I'd seen in high school basketball. A guy I'd covered, cool. Austin Reeves and Malik Monk. Those are Northeast Arkansas kids. Monk was actually a bigger prospect. He actually transferred out of Northeast Arkansas right when I moved there. So I hadn't seen as much of him, but I'd seen him at the state championship. And Austin Reeves, I have covered at least half a dozen of his games before. The guy that played in various colleges. He played at Wichita State, Oklahoma, and others. And he was not a highly touted recruit. Monk did go to Kentucky, but still was not necessarily considered an absolute great NBA prospect entering the league. But the fact that 2 out of the 5 players, which are in crunch time, the players you trust most, as much as I like those guys and they are good, solid players, but if you're not going to win a championship, if you've got those kids from Northeast Arkansas at the end of the game, and by the way, in that game, Reeves hit the game-winning shot. So he did deliver in that game, but that is a cause for concern for me. And I think part of LeBron's message was, hey, you guys better get this together. But as far as like LeBron loves Cleveland. People can say what he wants. They can call him a traitor for when he leaves, but he loves his hometown area. I know he's from Akron, but he considers Cleveland kind of his second home, given how close it is. He does so much for the community there with the school he has and all the other stuff he does. The only reason why he left Cleveland both times is that the team wasn't good enough. He wants to win, and I can't fault him. Like, he is concerned with his legacy, and I also can't fault him over that. I mean, when you're potentially trying to be the greatest player of all time, you got to win your rings, and I don't blame him for going to teams that he can win. When he first left Cleveland, he took like a bunch of scrubs to the NBA Finals, like Zaza Pachulia, Anderson Varejao. I mean, those were like starting players on his team. So he didn't have anybody he can win with. The second time around, Kyrie bolted. Kevin Love obviously has lost what he used to be. So he was not in a position. He was carrying the team in the playoffs because Kyrie was getting hurt even before he bolted, similar to that Dwayne Wade scenario. So as far as whether the Cavs are good enough or not good enough, right now, like, they could be a great team, and he sees that at the moment. But even if the Cavs were a dumpster fire, I can see him going back for one swan song season in Cleveland, retiring in Cleveland, because at that point, if he says this is my last season, he knows that the odds are that he doesn't win a ring in one season, no matter where he is. So we'll see. My other question, though, too, that he made a statement saying that he's going to play with his son. That is his number one goal. Bronny Jr. is first draft eligible in 2024. He's a high school junior right now. Obviously, that would require him playing one season of college hoops and immediately going straight to the NBA, which he's a pretty good talent, but he's not considered near LeBron's level. He may not be good enough to go 1 year in college and go straight to the pros. So the question mark is, LeBron would be 39, by the way, if he does go right away. So over under 50% chance we see LeBron playing with the son. We've never seen a father-son duo in NBA history. There has been father-son who have both played in the NBA, but never on the same team at the same time. Something we've seen it in baseball, but have not seen it in basketball. LeBron wants to be the first father to play with his son in an NBA game.
That's all well and good. I get where he's coming from. That's a cool thing. But the word that kind of like jumps to the top of my mind is novelty. Because as you mentioned, LeBron Jr., I think I looked it up that he's like roughly right around 34th in his class as far as like overall high school players, which is still really, really good. But that's not quite, like think about how many players are one and done every single year that go to the NBA and get drafted in, say, the first or even just like the second round. There's not a whole lot of one and done players because you have a lot of college guys who play for 2-3 years that are a little bit more physically mature, a little bit more skilled, that sort of thing. So I could see it happening, like if Bronny goes to say like OSU for 1 year and then goes pro, or if he maybe just plays, in some other professional league and then goes to the NBA, gets drafted, and LeBron says, okay, that's where I'm signing. That's where we're going to play for 1 year. I could definitely see that happening. But I think like the one thing to keep in mind, and I have no reason to doubt that LeBron James is an excellent father to his kids and everything. But you kind of have to like make that line of where does LeBron James and his legacy stop and where does his sons begin? Because think about what you're taking away. If it's, hey, let's say LeBron Jr. wants to go play college ball, and he's not necessarily good enough to be one and done. He wants to go to sophomore, junior year, what have you. If LeBron Sr. says, hey, go pro so we can play together, you're kind of sort of starting to mess with his life, his opportunities, what he wants to do and develop his own path. You know what I mean? So
sure.
I think we definitely can see it. I think it's going to be more of a novelty thing unless he makes some developmental jumps, which would be, like you said, completely unprecedented. I mean, consider Michael Jordan. His kids were pretty good high school players. Was it Whitney Young, I want to say?
Whitney Young, correct.
Like they were, pretty good basketball players, went to state, maybe even won in a year, but weren't quite to that level. So that's why I'm kind of hesitant in saying like, oh, it'd be awesome to see. It's like, well, the whole picture is it going to be awesome to see. If he's able to develop to that point, get to a point where, yes, he can have a future in the NBA and no, he's not going to miss out on the college experience. Because once he goes pro, he can't go back and play ball. Sure, I could see that
like
happen.
J.R. Smith, though.
Could go do that, sure. Could end up playing elsewhere around the world. There's lots of professional leagues that aren't the NBA. So that's the only thing that kind of like bothers me a little bit about it and is kind of nitpicky in terms of, choosing that path. But yeah, I could absolutely see that happening.
So I'm going to give LeBron the benefit of the doubt here.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this is totally like a scenario that we can't honestly give like a legitimate prediction. Cause I mean, we're sitting here, we're arguing it's something topical, but you just never know what's going to happen in life.
Exactly.
But I'm going to go ahead and give LeBron the benefit of the doubt in that scenario. I think that LeBron would be okay with his son playing, 2-3 years in college, even 4 years. I actually think LeBron is going to be a lot like Tom Brady. I think LeBron loves basketball so much. I think he is so talented. And I mean, he's got a coach that he spends millions of dollars on just to work on his body. And LeBron at 36 does not look that different from LeBron at 33 or even at 30. He's still insanely athletic. He's scoring 29 points a game right now, Tom. This is more than his career average. I know part of it is he has to carry a Lakers team that's not playing great, but he's still doing it efficiently. I mean, he's still near those 50% field goal percentage. His three-point attempts are up. His three-point percentage is actually up. So a lot like how Michael Jordan developed that mid-range shot later in his career. LeBron isn't quite as good of a shooter as Jordan was from the mid-range, but LeBron is better at threes, and he's definitely a pretty respectable three-point shooter, and he's gotten better at that. And I think he's only going to get better, to be honest. I can also see him going down in the post more as he gets older, using his sheer size and adjusting to the game. So my thought is that I think LeBron is going to play into his 40s. I really do. I think he wants to retire where his records will not be touched for a while, because I think he's going to retire with the most points. He has the potential to retire with the second most assists. At the very least, will likely be third in assists. Most likely will be, I mean, he already is highest scoring scorer in, I think, playoff history and All-Star game history. I think in regular season, he'll be number one scorer soon, but he has the potential to be top 3 in assists all time in the regular season and the postseason, and quite possibly top 2 if he plays long enough. I don't think he's going to touch John Stockton, I think, has the assist record, right? It's pretty high, but if you look
pretty far.
if you look at where LeBron is, he's realistically going to be top 3 in both of those categories. And it's going to be very hard for someone to touch him. So I think he realizes those numbers, and LeBron, believe it or not, I generally believe him. LeBron would have been okay with Anthony Davis becoming the scoring option. And that season when they won the ring, they were averaging roughly the same amount of points per game. I think that Davis has obviously regressed since then, but I can actually see LeBron being okay with scoring 22 a game and even being the second scorer on a super team. I really can. I think he is, for him, he wants to win, and he knows, what it takes to win, and he's all right with that. So I can see LeBron playing into his 40s, and I can see him playing very well into his 40s. So I think he would allow Bronny a chance to play college ball and still play together. Now, he said one season. He didn't say that this is something that he's looking for them to play 5 years together. He said one season, and we're talking about Bronny. Like, first off, he's not built like his dad. You're talking about like he's 34th recruit or whatever. He does not have the body LeBron had in high school. LeBron was so blessed. So he's not built like his dad. He's actually like, unless he grows a lot, which he can, but he's going to be a smaller guy in the NBA. We're looking at more of like a point guard in the NBA. And we know how good point guards are in the NBA. So I don't think he may not even be a guy that gets drafted. But I think there's so many teams that would draft him late or take him as an undrafted free agent just to create a sort of buzz. And if there's LeBron out there saying, I'm going to come to your team, they're going to say, even if it's for 1 year, we'll take LeBron James for 1 year. We'll take his son. He'll play 3 to 4 minutes a game. I mean, it's the same deal with Giannis's brothers. Giannis's brothers barely play, but one of them's on the Bucks because Giannis wants him there. So it would be the same scenario. They'll say, we'll take Bronny if we can get King James himself. So I think we're going to see LeBron play into his 40s. We're going to see LeBron return to Cleveland, and we're going to see LeBron play with Bronny. And he might do both of those because here's the deal. It's LeBron James. He's an incredible basketball player, and he's got a lot of haters, but he also has so many fans. Keep this in mind. Every year, he leads the NBA All-Star Game fan vote year after year after year, and no one is really ever close. Curry is like within 2,000 votes, is typically the closest guy. It was Team Durant because they got to go opposite conferences. But actually, if they were going by total votes, which they should have, quite honestly, because we have different players getting drafted. It should have been LeBron versus Curry, not versus Durant, because Durant actually was third in total votes. Curry was second. But LeBron is so popular, and he can do so much. I mean, think about this. Like, every team's got like a museum or whatever. And like, imagine being like, how about the Charlotte Hornets put LeBron together with Jordan? Imagine going through your Hall of Fame and saying, oh, LeBron James stopped and played here. It's pretty cool. So I believe LeBron when he says he really wants to play with the Sun, and he'll do anything to make it happen. And we know LeBron makes a lot of things happen with his GM abilities. He's a coach on the court. He knows how to facilitate, how to bring other stars. And people like playing with LeBron because LeBron is willing to pass the ball. It's not just about LeBron. Game on the line, LeBron does not have to take the final shot every time the way Kobe Bryant did. And heck, even Jordan in certain parts of his career. So I think LeBron is going to be just fine. I think he's going to end in Cleveland. He's going to play in here with the Sun. He'll make it all happen.
I actually think he'll probably, if I had to think this out, he's actually probably going to go end up in OKC with his son, because you look at all the draft picks that the Thunder have over the next bajillion drafts.
Sure.
They're just like, hey, they've stockpiled multiple picks in multiple drafts for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So it's whenever Bronny comes to the NBA, they can just throw away a pick and have several others.
Sure.
Plus, LeBron did mention, I don't know if it was a tweet or Instagram, where he was praising Thunder GM Sam Presti as well. So I actually think a meeting of the minds in Oklahoma, of all places, would be the where they meet up.
Well, and here's the beauty of LeBron. LeBron has already moved several places, and there's going to be people that will already hate him for that. Like, he's already done this several times. So at this point, the storyline and the hate, it doesn't get any different. He's already experienced it. And I think it actually is very impressive to go in different places and win. I don't think anyone's ever won a ring in 4 different teams. That speaks to how good you are and how you can transcend culture. So we'll see. I definitely think LeBron is going to make a lot of those things happen for sure.
Absolutely. Well, my mouse is back to working, so I can actually look at the rundown and get things in order again. So we talked a lot about, the main stars for the All-Star game so far. What else stood out to you about the events, about the weekend, about anything around this event?
quite a lot stood out, both for good and bad reasons. First off, I think LeBron going 5-0 in the All-Star game as the picker, props to him. I think that is actually impressive. I still don't know how we got Curry and Giannis. When I'm thinking of an All-Star game, the two guys I want on my team are Giannis and Curry because Giannis is the best in transition, and then Curry's the best at open threes. And what do we have in the All-Star game? Transition dunks, athleticism, and open threes. I don't know what Kevin Durant was doing, how we let both of those guys go. I mean, those are my first two picks if I'm team LeBron or team Durant. I guess obviously Durant didn't want to go with Curry. Maybe there's some animosity there, but how he took Embiid over Giannis or I think he took Embiid over Curry, but I don't know. I just don't get it. But I think the All-Star game itself was really good. And I think the stars put on a show. Curry had 50, Giannis hit 30, and LeBron had 24 and the game winner. So the game was really close to have that Elam ending. It went down to the last bucket at the end of the game. The game itself was phenomenal. Really good All-Star game. I think like you and everyone else, we'd like to see a little more defense earlier in the game, but that's just not going to happen. But I'll tell you this, other than the All-Star game, there was one other thing that saved the All-Star weekend, and I'll mention it in a little bit, but the other All-Star festivities were horrendous. Maybe the worst we've ever seen. I think this was the worst dunk contest I've ever seen. And not only was it bad because there was no dunk that stands out, there was so many missed dunks. Like it was just missed dunk after missed dunk. I mean, we had guys landing their dunk on their third, fourth try. They were giving them extra tries. It was just miss after miss. None of the dunks were creative. I think it was hands down the worst dunk contest of all time. And I don't think it was even close. I know the one last year was not great, but this one was significantly worse. I think they got to instill a tryout. If we're not going to let the stars, if the stars won't compete and you're going to pick some of these lesser level guys, we should have a behind the doors scene tryout or maybe show the tryout. Like these are the guys trying out for the dunk contest because that was absolutely pathetic. I think the skills challenge was a disaster as well. And the thing that stood out to me is it's All-Star weekend. We're supposed to see the best of the best. We had, quite frankly, scrubs in the dunk contest. And then the skills challenge, we had Giannis's brothers in the skills challenge, who are two of the worst players in the NBA. We had the rookies in the skills challenge. And then we had Team Cleveland, which actually did win. But obviously, like Garland's an all-star. Mobley isn't quite there, but he's pretty good. And I can't remember the other guy they had on there. Maybe it was Jared Allen. But again, he's like a lower level all-star. Like we did not have the best guys in the skills challenge. We didn't have the best guys in the dunk contest. It just didn't feel very all-star-y to me. The three-point contest was okay. Was missing Steph Curry. I think it was missing a few big names, but we did have Karl Anthony Towns put on a show. It wasn't a historically great or historically bad three-point contest. It was just okay. But the skills challenge was bad. The dunk contest was the worst I've ever seen. And I will say the Rising Skills Challenge did have a kind of a cool format where they had like 4 teams playing round robin up to 50. That did work for me. But again, nothing groundbreaking. I mean, LaMelo Ball was the big name in that game, but we don't have necessarily any of those guys in that first, second year game, like when we had LeBron and Carmelo playing back in the day. So overall, what stood out to me is that All-Star weekend was pretty bad, but LeBron and Steph saved it during the game on Sunday. But the one really cool thing about the All-Star game was that they honored the 75 best players of all time as part of the 75 year anniversary of the NBA. And we had Michael Jordan was out there. I had a special moment with LeBron, had a cool moment with Luka, and it was the game's current greats meeting the all-time greats, and the all-time greats kind of rekindling together with COVID and everything over the last few years. We haven't had those guys in the same room in quite a while. I know some of them didn't make it, like Bill Russell, because of COVID concerns, obviously didn't make it, but we had a whole bunch of them there. And it was really cool to see the NBA royalty, legends of the past and legends currently. So that was the positive. But The dunk contest was just really, really bad.
Yeah, that's where that's my primary go-to for this portion of the program for me, where it's just the dunk contest. I quite frankly, I think it needs to end. I mean, we could put this to like statement of the week category or statement of the
Sure.
week level category. But like it was once great because it had the very best doing it, and because quite frankly, athletes weren't as good. So when you have like the best of the best, there's a coinciding arc between like Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins were two of the best basketball players at the time, but also two that are just pure athletes. Same thing with Vince Carter when you think about the dunks that he was able to do. And even, within the past couple, 5, 10 years, Blake Griffin, outstanding athlete. Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine, outstanding athletes, guys who transitioned somewhat into starhood. I know LaVine more of a star than, say,
Not
Aaron Gordon.
Gordon,
Blake
though.
Griffin was, a star at one point in his career. But quite frankly, we see contest level dunks in games, on a breakaway where a player's left completely alone. I mean, part of what's so great about dunks in games is like you get the poster. Like that's almost more exciting to see than just a wide open dunk where you can jump over a car, bounce it off the top of your of the backboard, something like that. I mean, maybe that's a direction where the dunk contest is going to go, is actually make it more of an actual contest. Have the who was it? Charles Barkley and Dikembe Mutombo, who famously had the exchange where Barkley said, "I'm going to dunk on you," and Mutombo said, "No, you're not."
No, no,
And
no,
and
no, no,
and
no.
Barkley did not dunk on him at all. Michael Jordan actually getting a dunk over Mutombo at one point. Maybe it doesn't need to go. I've stumbled upon something here, comment. Maybe
Stick a
it
big man
actually,
under the paint, Rudy Gobert.
yeah, make it, the dunker versus the shot blocker, have a little bit of a scoreboard, have a little bit of fun, maybe have it as like a double elimination type thing where if you're dunked on twice or if you're blocked twice, you're out, and then you get the ultimate dunker and the ultimate blocker. I need to write a letter to Adam Silver right after this
Do it.
show.
Get to it. Oh, I love it.
I'm 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 actually putting a note in my phone because this is actually a pretty dang good idea. I can't believe I just 180'd myself on saying we should get rid of the dunk contest entirely and then actually just reinventing a better idea for the dunk
Oh
contest.
my
So
God.
that's what stood out for me. Dunk contest stinks. It hasn't been good for a long time for all the reasons that you listed. With social media, we see great dunks all the time. Let's revamp it though, okay? I'm gonna put this down for the next segment. Transitioning or actually staying with hoops.
Well, Colin, I do have
Oh, go
something
ahead.
else to ask you about
Oh,
the
go for
All-Star
it.
game. Just
Go for it. Yeah.
the dunk contest, rather. What would it take to get the biggest stars? I mean, is it possible? Is part of the reason like they don't want to risk injury, they don't want to risk embarrassment in the social
Hmm.
media world? I mean, what would it take for a mega star to enter the dunk contest? I mean, I think a guy I think of is John Morant, a rising star, a guy that they
Hmm.
asked to see if he can enter the dunk contest. And what about like a guy like LeBron James? Maybe he's got some hops still left. I mean, like
Hmm.
Giannis Antetokounmpo. What would it take for those guys to enter the dunk contest? Maybe like Zach LaVine, who was in the
Sure.
3-point contest, a guy who's been a great dunker before. What would it take to get like an all-star level player and a great dunker back in the dunk contest? Is it possible for us to see a great player in the dunk contest, or is like
Hmm.
what and why are we not seeing them? Because it used to be, like you said, it used to be the best players and the best dunkers. They wanted to be in that dunk contest. It didn't used to be where it was like the scrub players going in the dunk contest.
Hmm.
What is it going to take to get those guys in there?
I mean, on an individual level, it's going to take some personal pride wanting to do that because I would imagine like it's more than just, taking a ball and going and dunking it. You have to practice so many other things. I
Sure.
imagine that, part of the reason why some of the big stars went to the dunk contest in earlier years is because of the spotlight it provided them. How much shine is Vince Carter getting up in Toronto, for example, if
Sure.
he's not also in the dunk contest? But like I was kind of just saying, like with Twitter, with like highlights that you can watch on NBA.com, like you don't really need that anymore to get
Sure.
exposure. You can get plenty of shine in just any sort of regular season game because we have enough media assets around us to find those amazing plays that, LeBron has nothing to win. He has everything to lose. So that's why it's kind of like if we change up the format a little bit on the dunk contest, we could actually kind of like reinvigorate it a little bit. Because currently all it is you go, you do your dunk, you get your score, you sit down type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a little bit stale. Like it hasn't really changed in however many decades the dunk contest has been in. And it doesn't have the same levels of suspense that, say, a 3-point shootout does, where everybody has the same number of shots, everybody has the same amount of time, and you have like a little bit of that buzzer beater notion, and there's pace, there's action to it. With the dunk contest, if LeBron goes out and misses 2 or 3 dunks, imagine all like the hate that's flowing in on him, that type of thing, completely unjustified. So it's kind of like, what is the solution? What gets them back to the table as far as stars in the dunk contest? It comes down to pride, or perhaps just changing up the format and giving them something a little interesting to play for over what the current format is, because I just don't think it's that appealing as a contest anymore.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there in the modern day game. And that's why, like, going to the Lakers, obviously, like LeBron went there, but like the Knicks would be a better example. Like, we don't see stars going to the Knicks anymore because being a Knick isn't as great. And a lot of those guys, I mean, there is a sort of shine playing in the Madison Square Garden, but you can do that as an away player. I think that's why you see Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, we're talking about all-star fan voting. Giannis, by the way, finished 4th in the all-star fan voting, 2-time MVP. Giannis was like barely behind Durant and Curry. Like, those were really close. So Giannis is a wildly popular player and an excellent player, and he plays in Milwaukee. Like, you could not be as mega of a star if you were in Milwaukee back in the day. So it is different with not only the social media, but quite frankly, like the highlights on ESPN and the TV contracts, the games, and like the Instagram too. Like, all these guys are on various social media platforms. Like, there's so many different ways to get it, because it used to be back in the day, like you would be on like a primetime game in a primetime environment. Nowadays, you can watch like NBA League Pass. You can, if you're a big enough fan, you can watch your guy every night, and you can watch 6 teams or whatever the package includes. So it is just a very different. You're right. They have more to lose than the gain. I do think, though, I don't know if like there's money that they can do, or just a little extra incentive they can pay them. And I think I would like to see, like, I think the dunk contest, I think, is perfect for a guy like Ja Morant. Ja Morant is already a star, but he's kind of like a second-tier star. I think that could be something that could really grow his brand. I think I would have loved to see LeBron in this contest a few years ago. I'm not so sure that he'll do it now, but I think LeBron would be great to see. I think if we got like a new school versus old school, we threw like LeBron and Ja Morant in there, and maybe brought Zach LaVine back. Like, let's bring him back. He put on a show. Aaron Gordon. I mean, the thing is, like, there are some guys who are not mega stars that are great dunkers, and Aaron Gordon is the first that comes to mind. Like, I feel like the NBA isn't working hard enough to find these guys. That's why I want like a tryout, because even Zach LaVine, like, he's turned into a very good player now, but like early in his career when he was in the dunk contest, he was more of a dunker than anything, and then he became a better player. So I don't know, but they got to find some way to put the guys in, because I think there is still some fun to be had in the dunk contest. I don't want to eliminate it. I want to improve it. Your idea is one way to think of it, but I definitely think getting better athletes in it could make it better.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of better athletes, unfortunate news coming out of Phoenix. CP3 Chris Paul is out for about 4 to 6 weeks for the Suns. Let's talk a little bit about how this affects the rest of the league, particularly the Western Conference, how much it hurts Phoenix. Just for a little bit of context, Phoenix currently sits atop the Western Conference with a whopping 6.5 game lead over the Golden State Warriors, with Memphis in the 3rd spot, 8 games back. Utah is 12 games back. So obviously this is a significant injury for the Suns. How much of an impact, though, is it going to have on them the rest of the season and heading into the postseason?
I say almost zero. And I think it's actually like assuming he gets back healthy, that is obviously a big asterisk. But
Mhm.
assuming that the injury is fine, which I don't know if you saw, he did play in the All-Star game for a couple minutes. He wanted to get like an All-Star game cameo. And it was weird because they said that they wanted him to get an assist. And he played for 2 minutes and didn't even get like an assist. Like the other teams knew it. Like, I mean, if he's going to go out there, like freaking throw down
Mhm.
an open dunk, get CP3 an assist, the all-time leader in All-Star game assists. We had that trivia question last week on the show. I don't think that it's bad because I think with CP3, by the way, still leading the league in assists, I think CP3 is still a borderline top 10 player. I think he's just barely in or just barely out, but I think we talked about the gap between, say, the third best player and the 12th best player in the league is very, very small. I think CP3 to me is right around the top 10 player, right around the top 3 point guard. I think he's still amazing and he is not that far off his prime, but I do think that he gets tired a little bit more easily. And I think it showed in the NBA finals. He played well in the finals. He was great, but he was actually a little bit worse in the finals than he was earlier in the playoffs. And I think it's because he got worn down. And you look at the numbers, they were pretty good still. His efficiency was good, but it didn't seem like he was looking for a shot as much because I think he was just tired. So if anything, like 4 to 6 weeks, and he gets some extra time with the All-Star break as well here. Take the time to heal up, Chris, and I think it's going to give him fresh legs come the playoffs. So assuming this isn't a nagging injury, obviously,
Mhm.
if this injury does not get him at 100%, because I think the Suns are one of the favorites in the NBA, but the only way they're going to win a ring is if Chris Paul and Devin Booker are both 100%. There's so many good teams out there. They're not going to win with Chris Paul at 75%. So obviously, if I would say like I would choose for them not to have the injury as their best case scenario, but assuming that it's not a nagging injury, I actually don't think it'll affect them much. I know the Warriors can get hot. I know the West is tough, but even if it is 6 weeks, I'm not too sure the Warriors can make up 6.5 games in 6 weeks.
Mhm.
If they do, that's where it maybe becomes a little bit of a problem. But my gut instinct is saying that the Suns are still going to get the best record in the West and in the league. You talk about 6.5 in the West, but they're probably closer to 10 games ahead of the top Eastern Conference team. So I think
Mhm.
Phoenix is
Yeah.
still in good position to get the number 1 seed. And I think that this actually could almost be sort of a blessing in disguise, a silver lining type thing, because it can allow Chris Paul's legs to heal up. This is a hand injury. So heal up the hand, but also don't have the wear and tear on an older player. So I think it's not such a big deal to me personally.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, there's 24 games left on the Phoenix Suns schedule. If you even go to the far outreaches, that's about 18 games. So he'll come back, really late March, really early April, which actually is kind of nice. Gives him a couple of games to work back into a bit of a flow heading into the playoffs. So I see it maybe hurting insofar as if you believe home court advantage is the end all be all for a team like the Phoenix Suns, which I don't necessarily think is the case. I mean, if anybody can withstand
They're a
having an
great road
injury to
team.
their, one of their two top players, two or three top players, yeah, they can definitely withstand that. Um, Golden State hasn't been playing super duper well heading into the All-Star game. Their last 10, they were 6-4 in their last 10, which is pretty decent. But I think they can make up some ground. Maybe they can make a push and make up that many games between now and the end of the season, especially if you consider Chris Paul coming back. Not going to be like drop him in like you would an NBA Live type of thing where he's back, completely to normal. He still has to work through some things toward the end of the season. So maybe they end up in the second spot. Maybe it comes down to having to play an extra game in Golden State as opposed to having them come to your building for four. We'll see how much that matters. I mean, the Suns are a really good team all around, really good at home, really good away. So I don't know how much that necessarily matters. To break that down, 26-5 at home, 24-5 on the road. So
And here's the
it
deal,
doesn't matter
Tom,
that
too.
much.
6.5 games is a lot. Let's say the
Sure.
Suns go, let's say, and I think they'll go better than this, but let's just
Mhm.
do And I think the Warriors might be worse than this. But let's do like over those 18 games, let's do like a realistic best case record for the Warriors and a realistic like more worst case for the Suns. The Suns go 10-8 and the Warriors go 15-3. You make up 5 games in that scenario, they still hold on to that sure, 1 seed. So that is a lot of games to make up. And I think they still have a good squad. I think they can definitely still be over 500 without CP3. And as long as while he's out, they're near the 500 mark, I think they're pretty safe on getting that number 1 overall seed. It's going to give a lot of other guys a good chance to play. And by the way, keep this in mind, like a guy that was maybe the laughing stock of the NBA a few years ago, obviously a significant downgrade to Chris Paul, but Cam Johnson has become, I would say, one of the best backup point guards in the league. He's shown that he can play well in spurts.
You mean
Campaign. That's what I meant. Cam Johnson, also a player on their team
that
will do better. He's more of a small forward type, I think, though. I did mean Campaign, though. So they've got some options. I think it actually could help Devin Booker a little bit in that he'll be asked to play make more, which he does okay, but that's something that his game can definitely grow on. So we'll see what happens with CP3. I certainly wish him all the best, and I hope that he does come back. And it's going to be fun to see him play in the playoffs. He does deserve a ring. I know I'm now knocking on the Warriors train. I would prefer Curry to get Finals MVP because I love Curry. But for me, it's like when I look at who I'm cheering for, like I'm cheering for LeBron, Curry, and CP3, the 3 guys I most want to win now that we've seen Giannis win. Something to keep in mind, though, like, by the way, this is something that just occurred to me off the top of my head. I don't know what the deal on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George is. Like, are those guys ever coming back? Are they going to ever play basketball? Because you look at the bottom of the East, or the West, rather, you can have the Lakers could be an 8-9, 7-8-9 seed, and you have the Clippers who are also in that range. So you could be the Warriors and Suns. You can get potentially stuck having to play the Lakers and Clippers, which is none too easy. And by the way, I do think the Lakers are worse this season than last year because for some reason their defense has gotten worse. Some players have changed, but the amount of defense getting so much worse this season in LA is kind of one of those inexplicable things. But the Lakers might have beat the Suns last year in the first round if Davis doesn't go down. They're up 2-1 in that series. Game 4 at home. They would have gone up 3-1. They were up when Davis gets hurt in the game, and that completely changed that series. So keep that in mind. Like the Warriors and the Suns could potentially get stuck having to play the Lakers and or Clippers.
That would not be fun. Quick injury update on that front. February 4th, Tyronn Lue said that Leonard is probably not coming back this season, so doesn't look like we'll be getting Boardman anytime soon.
Not even in the playoffs?
Okay. I'm just looking at a little one-liner here, just probably not
then never mind about the Clippers, but the point still stands with the Lakers because Davis should be back, and we see playoff LeBron turn on a switch. We've seen him win series alone by himself before. Yeah.
Paul George expected to have a couple of weeks of a ramp-up period before returning to game action. So they still have to do like an MRI on him and then like get him back up to speed before he's actually in. But it's kind of, wow. It's just fascinating that the Clippers, as decimated as they are, still like a touch better than the Lakers. It's just incredible. Anyway, moving over to college football. The CFP has announced that they are going to stick with just 4 teams heading to 2025. Comment, what are your thoughts? Do you think this is still the right number? Do you think that there is a better solution in play?
I want to say this, and Tom, you know I'm very passionate about a lot of subjects. I do think they can do better than that, but I also think that this is one of those things where I am not like the most passionate about and most convinced about, because we've had this talk on the show. That 1-4 game is a dud. Even the 2-3 game is sometimes a dud. And the playoff has not been great. The better games in the playoffs have been the championship. And the vast majority of the time, the previous BCS system did end up grouping the 2 best teams together. So I'm not as upset about the playoff or as invested as some people are. And I, you know me, Tom, I'm a very, very opinionated person, and I have tons of opinions, and I'm very passionate in what I think. So I can see a lot of merits to having a BCS system. We can have a 14 playoff, an 18 playoff. By BCS system, I would rather prefer humans to make that decision, work in the computers, and have a committee and maybe pick 2 teams. But ultimately, my best case scenario, I do think, is still 8 teams, because there is something exciting about like a play-in tournament. I would say either 4, 8, or 16. 16 sounds a lot, but then you could see a really cool upset. But then you're obviously adding a bunch of extra games. So 16 may be too much. I think 8 is a good number. And the reason why I think 8 is a good number is that it would give everyone an opportunity to be represented in the playoff. I think we should have the 5 Power 5 conference champions automatically in the playoff. And then we should have the top group of 5 team, whoever it is, even if they're ranked 15th or whatever in the country, they should automatically be in the playoff. I'll give the group of 5 an opportunity. And then the next 2 highest teams should be 2 teams at random. And that's how you make up your 8-team field. One thing that I also feel very, very conflicted on, though, and you're talking about eliminating the dunk contest, and then you did come up with a better idea. But one thing I've thought about, and I go back and forth on it, is should we eliminate the conference championship games for college football? Should we have a regular season conference champ? Because the one thing that drives me nuts more than anything is a team being penalized for losing the conference championship, because obviously you're playing one of the other 2 best teams in your conference. And I think of our alma mater, Mizzou. I think this was a year or 2 before I went there as a student, so it would have been 1 extra year. For you, it was like the 07, 08 Mizzou team that lost twice to Oklahoma. They lost to Oklahoma in the regular season, and then Mizzou beat them head-to-head. So Mizzou and Kansas both had 1 loss in the regular season, and Mizzou won the head-to-head matchup. And I don't think Kansas had even played Oklahoma that season. I think Oklahoma ended up playing in the national championship game that year. So that was probably the 2nd best team in the country. And Mizzou only lost to them the whole season, did not get an Orange Bowl, did not get a big bowl game. And Kansas got an Orange Bowl bid because they had 1 loss despite losing head-to-head against Mizzou. That really rubbed me the wrong way. On the counterpoint, I do think it gives us an opportunity to see the cross-divisional opponents like Alabama and Georgia getting to play each other, which that is obviously going to be great in the SEC title game for years to come, especially now that Kirby Smart finally got a monkey off the back. Georgia beating Alabama in the national title game. That game will feel very different. It'll feel like you really think either team can win, because it's always felt like Alabama whoops on Georgia, like it loses its shine, but now it truly feels like a rivalry. So I can see the merits of both. Best cases, I would keep it, but if I were the committee, I would greatly, greatly undervalue a conference championship loss. When you're looking at teams, unless you lose by a lot, that does change. But if you play respectfully when looking at a team's resume, you really ought to look at what they did before that, and you can't penalize a team losing against a great team in the conference title game. So I like the idea of 8 because I want every conference to be represented, and I want the group of 5 to be represented. And then we can get statistics, and, a group of 5 teams will say, oh, well, you can't say they weren't left out. You can't say that the Pac-12 or, whatever conference in a given season was left out. So I like the idea of an 8-team system, but I'm not heartbroken about this. This is not one of the things that I feel most passionate about.
Yeah, for me, this is where I actually prefer going backward in time. I actually, in hindsight, prefer the bowl system a lot better because exactly what you mentioned, the 1-4 matchup typically isn't very close. The 2-3 is a coin flip on whether or not it's close. And then, the championship is where it's at. We had the system before. Just have the national championship be the 2 best teams that the committee can pick out. Now, the tricky part is that this year, of course, how would the committee have done with picking, the Georgia Alabama SEC championship and then saying, well, this is also going to be then the national championship. So I get that there's a little bit of a challenge there. Otherwise, we would have had Georgia and Michigan as the national championship game, and we saw that wasn't particularly close.
That would have been boring. And that's the point of having 4 teams, because there are some years when the BCS system where there was a third team there that maybe thought they deserved it. So that's why, like, I do lean having the 4. I think it's very hard to leave out someone in that scenario.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think like I prefer going back to just like straight up everybody gets a bowl, because the winner of the semifinal game, like, it kind of feels weird. It's like, hey, we won this bowl and then lost in the national championship, so the season kind of feels like a bit of a downer. Like, it's just kind of odd that we're kind of mixing the two things a little bit. But I would say go back to regular bowl systems, fine. 4 teams, I think, is fine. 8, I get it from a fairness perspective, but if we're seeing mismatches in a 1-4 matchup, I mean, we're not.
What are we going to see in 1-8?
Exactly, yeah. And the thing that I'm a little bit, leery of in this sort of scenario is that these aren't professional players. Sure. And these are guys who actually are kind of looking to the pros as like the next step. I mean, how awful would it be? Because you're playing instead of 14 games when you throw in the playoff? If you're playing like a 15th or a 16th game, depending on how much we're stretching out the college football playoff, basically you're having kids play at a professional schedule, which opens them up to fatigue and injury a lot more when they have next goals in mind potentially. Sure. So I think 8 is the absolute farthest it can go. I'm fine with 4, and I'd be perfectly fine going back to a bowl system as well. Going to like 12 or 16, that's just way, way, way too much. And I know it's all about money because that's what the NCAA is about. But it's really hard from a product perspective to say like, oh yeah, I really want to see, let me scroll down here. I want to see Georgia and Louisiana face off in the college football playoff. Like, nobody's expecting that to be an upset. Nobody really wants
Was Louisiana
to see
the 16 or what?
Yeah, they're the 16. And obviously I'm not like rearranging things for conference winners or what have you, but Louisiana finished 16th. Yeah.
I would say the one other one that they talked about is the 12. And I think under the 12 system, they were talking about maybe the top 4 getting a bye. So then in theory, like that would be similar to an 8, which in some way that system sort of has a merit too. I wouldn't go as far as 16 for kind of the reasons that you said. I would say this though, if we are talking about like the toll on the body of the kids, like we could remove a college football game from the season to allow for that. We can get rid of get rid of like the cupcake game, which is another talk that we had back in the day, doing like a conference only schedule, because that was pretty exciting. The one year we saw it in COVID, instead of having 8 conference games and 4 non-conference games, could you have 10 conference games and then 2 non-cons, but your 2 non-cons being legitimate teams, not cupcakes. Then we could also do that, and we can have maybe 1 non-con opponent, and then you have your your playoff games, extra games for the better teams. And that's the thing. If you do have a conference game schedule where you play like 10 conference games, like you're playing almost everyone in your conference, and that would allow for Alabama and Georgia to play each other. And then we could get rid of the conference championship game if everyone is playing everyone in conference. So that's something to think about. Or like almost everyone. You would miss out on someone. It's a rotating schedule. It won't be every year, but most years you play most everyone.
And like, that's an important thing to consider as well, is like we haven't seen the end of conference realignment just yet. Like Oklahoma, Texas are coming over to the SEC. Big Ten's been kind of quiet on their acquisitions, as has like the ACC, but like, what sort of things might be in the works? Is the Big 12 going to get further poached, by some of these bigger conferences? Like, that's the sort of thing where it also makes sense to just leave it at 4 for now until these things settle a little bit. And as far as the conference only schedule goes, it kind of comes down to, for what are we optimizing? Are we optimizing for wanting to see basically a semi-pro product where we just want to see the best college teams facing each other? Because part of the not necessarily appeal, but part of the benefit of the cupcake schedule is that smaller schools who otherwise would not be able to afford their athletic program, their football
They get
program,
money, right?
they get money. So if we're eliminating these games, we're basically almost saying like not not every school gets to have football anymore. Some of these smaller schools are no longer going to be able to have teams, and we're just going to kind of see like more compression to like either really good football or no football whatsoever. And you kind of lose some of that small school charm a little bit. So I don't know. It
That
basically comes. It's
That's why
really
it's very, very complicated.
yes.
It is, and that's, by the way, Tom. That's why I don't want colleges paying athletes, and I'm a little torn on this NIL thing. I know technically it's not the colleges, and
Sure.
that's what, like I'm willing. Like, this is as far as I'll go. I would more rather, and what bothers me is that boosters can give the kids money, basically.
Sure.
And that's kind of like created some unfairity. And that's, again, this is a whole nother rabbit hole we can open up, but college athletics are very complicated. Ultimately, I actually think the decision, like now that I think about it more, I do think 8 down the road would be better. But I think that Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC and some of the other conference realignment, I think that is ultimately why they did put a timeout on this until 2025. And it's probably not a bad decision. I think there's always people wanting more, but more or less, the committee has not gotten a ton of backlash at the 4. I think more people would want extra, but there's a lot less chatter about it than when we had the BCS system. And there is some people like you, and I can also kind of understand your point, that actually think it's worse. So I think they're kind of trying to reassess. I think they're definitely not going to go back to the 2 because to them, they get extra money by even having the 4. So there's no way they're going backwards. It's just a matter of keeping it and just how much do you expand it. And I think 16 is too much. 8, I think, is just the right number. But we'll see. We'll definitely see what happens with college sports.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. And like my like last small little closing point is like, it's fine. It's good that there's a difference in what college football provides versus what pro football provides. And like having a playoff kind of narrows that gap. Like there is something about the charm of the bowl system. There's a charm that you don't play everybody every single year.
Sure.
You know, it's same thing with basketball. Like you got your conference championship and that's like really drama filled. And then you got the NCAA tournament. And it's wonderful how college basketball and professional basketball are separate. I know with football, you get more money by being more pro-like with your postseason structuring. But I think you kind of almost have to like think about, you have 2 different audiences. So it's kind of nice to actually be a little bit more nostalgic, a little bit more, conservative, if you will, in how you're pursuing that sort of thing. So that's kind of like where I land.
One more thing I just thought of too. Another reason that maybe would support the 18 playoff is you would see a lot more of those NFL level draft picks at the highest stage. We had numerous Ohio State guys sitting out the Rose Bowl because they're interested in their draft stock. And that happens among other teams. That's the first example I think of, but there's multiple teams that were in like big bowl games. Like I get it a little more if you're in the Independence Bowl, whatever, but we had guys that were in major bowl games sitting out the bowl games. So that is something that having more playoff teams, I think it would more encourage the kids to play. And I know there's always a risk of injury, but you know my thought on it. I don't like the idea of playing scared. You can get injured anywhere. And I want to see those college kids at the greatest stage. And this is a greater problem among sports as a whole, in professional sports as well, like something that drives me nuts. And I'll keep this brief. We don't have to get in a whole thing on this because I know we've talked about this before, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more. But I do think that professional athletes have become softer. The need for rest. I know we got to protect our bodies, but really, normal people can't just skip a day of work if they just you have certain sick days, certain scenarios, but you cannot take an extended amount of leave of absence because, you just don't feel like it. You think you'll feel more rested. Well, yeah, you will, but there's a certain bottom line to it. And I think that we have the best trainers in sports right now. We have the best medicine. We have the best surgeons, the best doctors. I mean, these guys in theory are built to not rest as much with all like the physical and mental health that they can get out there, all the services that are available to them. So I don't like this whole thing of, we're going to rest. We're going to be and literally this is what happened with the Clippers. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have been resting like crazy. And I think in some cases that could have reverse effects on your body because your body is not used to playing at that high level, not used to that same speed. You're getting too much rest. And that's how a Leonard and a George are now out because they rested too much. Now they're putting more strain on their body. I can tell you from physical experience that when I tried to go ice skating a few weeks ago, I had not ice skated in years. And granted, I've gained weight. That maybe has something to do with it, like the physical amount of body weight I'm putting on it. But my foot, Tom, hurt a ton from ice skating. I couldn't make it the full hour and a half. That was the ice skate. I was done, man. And that's because my body was not used to putting that type of toll on it because it's not an activity I'd done in years. So I think even for these professional athletes to like flip a switch and just rest a bunch, then play a bunch, rest a bunch, like I think that maybe it's having adverse effects on their bodies. And I definitely would like to see, Michael Jordan was out there playing 82 games a season and he was dominating. He was not tired come the NBA finals, come the fourth quarter. I know he's a superhuman example, but that used to be the norm. You played the games. And I think that across all sports, across all levels, we are too obsessed with resting. We need to see these elite level athletes playing more, given that all of the physical and mental, avenues they have to heal up. They got to go out there and play to win the game, as Herm Edwards would say. We play to win the game. And too many of these kids are resting and we're sending them the wrong message from an early age.
Absolutely. Well, first, kudos to you for going out and attempting to ice skate. I don't even know how to ice skate. So that just like putting on the skates and maintaining it some semblance of balance is impressive enough. Somebody who is also able to maintain a decent amount of balance and impressiveness on the ice is Nathan Chen of USA. Let's move into Winter Olympics. As far as like some of the stories that stood out, I've got I've got 4 stories on the American side, and then a really fun one that just tickled my fancy.
Go ahead and start. Hit me first.
Okay, I'll go with Nathan Chen, the absolute redemption that he had from his fall in Pyeongchang. I think it was 17th at the end of the short program. Ended up finishing 5th overall for men's in South Korea. Comes and absolutely dominates for gold this time around. So just a wonderful story on his end. Next up for me is Erin Jackson, first Black woman to win speed skating gold, and she's the first American to win since 1994. So it's been a long, long time since we've had American gold on that event. And like, oddly enough, I didn't know about this until the Olympics. She's one of the best in the world. Actually, now that she's got gold, she's the best in the world, but actually had a slip up in qualifiers and technically didn't qualify for the event. But teammate and friend Brittany Bow gave up her spot in the 500 meter so that Erin Jackson could compete, which is just a mind boggling, sense of selflessness that you have an opportunity to go and compete at your best for an Olympic medal, but you go ahead and you give that opportunity to somebody that is amazing at what they do, and you give them that opportunity. Like there's that saying, lay down your life for a friend. This person laid down an Olympic gold opportunity for a friend. I think that is just absolutely amazing.
I knew the stat that you mentioned that, that she was the first African-American, first person since 94. I knew that. I guess I hadn't heard that story about her teammate. That's really cool. Yeah,
it's absolutely an incredible act of selflessness. And then for her to come through, of course, and capitalize on it just makes it like that perfect coupling at the end of the story. And then a couple of old heads, so to speak, on snowboarding. We had Shaun White, obviously his career coming to a close, was really pulling for him on that half pipe, ended up finishing 4th. But some of the other snowboarders, absolutely amazing, and all of them acknowledging him as
Mm-hmm.
the godfather, the one who pioneered the sport. And of course, there are going to be, better trained athletes, more refined equipment and technique. But he's the one who laid the groundwork for all that and helped make it an Olympic event. So a nice cap to his career. And then Lindsay Jacobellis wins her first gold at the age of 36. She hadn't medaled since 2006. So she went several Olympic iterations, decades since she won a medal at all, wins her first gold at the age of 36. Absolutely incredible for her as well. So those are my top four American stories. I'll let you go into before I get to just a really fun one
I'm
to
looking
end.
forward to that. All right. Well, hey,
You might regret saying that, but go ahead.
one thing that stood out to me that in these Olympics is that these athletes are human, and we talk a lot about the upsets we've had in recent seasons. Well, it continued in the Olympics, and I think a lot of it is that maybe because of the training and the preparation, the video, the enhanced medicine, whatever. I think this is something we've seen across all of sports. The field has shrunk. The difference between the very best and the average was maybe like here and here, and now it's like here and here. Like the best is the best, but there's a lot of different people that can succeed, and I think pressure it does get to people, and I think that is something that we saw at these Olympics. Michaela Schifrin had all the pressure for America. She was one of the hyped up athletes. She was expected by some people to win 5 medals, some probably a little bit too much expectation, 5 golds, but that is something that some people had said. She can win 5 medals. She can win 5 golds. She ended up winning exactly 0. She had a disappointing Olympics. She actually fell in the qualifying in her first 2 events. So really, as great as Schifrin has been in her career, both at the World Championships and the Olympics, it showed you that these athletes are human, that they could lose. Israel Hanyu, the great figure skater, had won gold in the last 2 Olympics. He got 4th, and he took multiple falls on the ice. He was supposed to get 2nd. It was like him against Nathan Chen. He was predicted by many to get a silver medal, if not a gold. He doesn't even end up on the podium at all. So I thought that was a storyline. A lot of the favorites not succeeding. I will say this. I had a lot of the same stuff you had. I had definitely one that I loved was Shaun White. And I think I saw multiple interviews of him, both immediately after the event and days after. Shaun White is a pioneer for the sport. And he just seems like such a great guy. Like, there's just a sense of maturity. And he's a guy that I saw like an old video where they interviewed him after like his first Olympics. And he was talking about like getting celebratory drinks. And it was like a CNN interview. And the interviewer was like all serious, like, Shaun, you're 17. Like, you don't mean you're drinking. He's like, nah, baby, I'm drinking Mountain Dews. It's just like a classic interview. You see Shaun White as a kid, like what was like 12, 16 years ago, whatever it was. And now you see him as an adult and just the maturity he had. And you mentioned like the other skaters, like they paid homage to him. Like after he got done with his run, like he was getting like love, not only from Team USA, but other skaters around the world. And it's amazing because Shaun White started off as a skateboarder, and then he transitioned into snowboarding. Absolutely legendary career. By the way, he got 4th place, like at 35.
Yes.
So he didn't do too bad either. That's the one thing that was a little unfortunate. I think one of the biggest things of these Olympics was the female figure skating drama in the figure skating. I'll get to Nathan Chen in a bit. I have to mention him. I know you mentioned him, but there was so much drama in the female figure skating. A lot of drama in my family surrounding it because we obviously, this, my aunt and my cousin are huge figure skating fans. We Skyped back in Bulgaria, and we had a lot of debates about it, and it was just one thing after another. The big drama was, you hit on it last week, Camilla Vallieva, a 15-year-old talent. She was the gold medal favorite. She was allowed to compete despite testing positive for a banned doping system. She was first after the short skate, and she's just gotten so much hate across the world, so much pressure, and she crumbled in the free skate. She went from first to fourth off the medal stand, falling on multiple jumps. That was just a very dramatic situation. She probably shouldn't have been allowed to compete altogether. And then she does compete. And then her coach is really rude. And there's a lot of drama around the Russian coach who coaches all 3 Russian girls who are supposed to go 1, 2, 3 in the Olympics. And the 2 girls that did go 1, 2, I believe it was Anna Sherbakova got first. Alexandra Trusova got second. And Trusova landed 5 quads, the toughest jump in figure skating. No other woman had ever landed 5 quads in any competition, and she gets second place. Only a handful of men have ever done 5 quads. I believe that Nathan Chen was the only other person at these Olympics doing 5 quads, and she gets second place? Are you kidding me? Highway robbery. I know the figure skating community says she doesn't have the same artistry when she's not doing jumps, and that's where me and my aunt and cousin had a massive fight. I'm a fan of the jumps. They like the artistry. Not like a fight, but we argued on Skype, and it was pretty intense. So no one was called any bad names, but we were just very vocal. But the drama was that the girl that got second, Trusova, like, you know, she didn't want to celebrate a silver medal. She didn't want to like thank her teammate or her coaches. She told her coach that she hated the coach. She hated her teammate. They got this on camera. It was just a whole lot of drama, and she did get robbed, quite frankly. I actually agree with her, but it's obviously a very subjective sport. And the Russian coach, like she said, the coach, you knew this would happen. I was never supposed to get gold. Like you knew from the start. And the drama is that the coach coaches all 3 girls, and the coach is a jerk. And this girl had left the coach, then she came back to her, and there was just so much drama surrounding the female figure skating, and it didn't, like Johnny Ware said it best. He said that it didn't feel like anyone won a medal because we had like the girl who fell, who was the doper, crying, and her coach was yelling at her like, why did you screw up? Like this girl literally had the worst moment of her life, and her coach is yelling at her on national TV like, you screwed this up, blah, blah, blah. And then she also coaches the other 2 girls, and you have the second girl telling the coach that she hates her. She's trying to, like, the coach is yelling at her and she's trying to go for a hug. She's pushing the coach away. Like, it was just drama left and right. And that's the dangers of kids at the highest stage. Because I think one of the girls is 15, one was 17, and I don't remember what the other one was, but she was also very, very young. So we had teenagers pretty much. So a lot of drama in the figure skating. That was a storyline that stood out. And then I think Nathan Chen, to me, was the most positive story in the Olympics. You mentioned him having the redemption from last year. I said it in the buildup to the Olympics. The dude had won like 16 of his last 17 events, like 3 world championships, and was flawless. Did not fall a single time in the Olympics. If you watch the Olympic free skate, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place Japanese guys all fell at least once. Some of them fell twice. One of them, I think, might have even fallen 3 times. It was like, if you're watching the free skate, all these guys were falling on their jumps. And here you have Nathan Chen performing the hardest jumps, and he's landing them on his feet every time. So I thought he was phenomenal. The other thing that sticks out to me is just how dangerous all those sports are. Skeleton, luge, mobile, they call it the new one. I call it the Batmobile. I noticed it. The bobsled. I mean, that's just like, it's mind-blowing how scary those are. Those skiers that are doing flips in the air. Like, literally, I want to see the Olympics of normal people trying Olympic events. And some of them I don't want to see because we'll see injuries. But, like, it's just mind-blowing how my thought, like, in the Summer Olympics, I enjoy a little bit better overall because I'm a fan of, like, ball contact sports. But the Winter Olympics, even more so than the Summer Olympics, just the amount of like sheer danger and literally the fact that we don't have like career-ending injuries left and right is just speaks to how good these athletes are. It's just mind-boggling.
Absolutely. Well, I think was it 1 or 2 Winter Olympics ago? Wasn't there a woman who like competed in so many events that she was able to qualify for the Olympics and literally like didn't do any tricks like up and down a half pipe. Like she just like snowboarded up and down. I want to say, I don't know if it was in Pyeongchang or if it was in.
I remember this, and I can't remember either.
Okay. Okay,
I know
but like you remember
about.
it happening, unless we're having like one of those Nelson Mandela moment things that people talk about, where we have a shared remembrance of something that didn't actually happen. But I'm 99% sure that
That's a Nelson
happened.
Mandela moment? I've never heard that before.
Oh, it's this theory that like everybody, like I forget like the exact example with Nelson Mandela, but it's that everybody shares a memory of something that isn't actually true.
Okay.
Like another good example. Are you familiar with the Bernstein Bears?
No.
Okay, well that's the other one. Okay, so you have some homework to do on your end for that.
I'm getting homework. Castleman is assigned homework on Salute Your Sports. All right.
Professor Castleman is in the building. But to wrap up the Olympics coverage, and we do our very best to be a family-friendly show. So I will skirt around some issues here as delicately as I can, closing up the Olympics. So,
oh boy.
You've heard of Jack Frost nipping at your nose.
I have heard that.
To the 50-kilometer men's cross-country skiing. It was a race that was actually shortened down to 30 kilometers due to extraordinarily high winds, extraordinarily cold temperatures. Finnish cross-country skier Remi Lindholm suffered a rather sensitive portion of his anatomy being frozen by the time he got to the end of the race. The kicker for me in this story is that this is the second time that this has happened to him in an event.
Uh-oh.
The first time took place last year at an event in his native Finland.
Okay.
So what's kind of going through my mind is like, this is not a pleasant experience for you, or I imagine any number of men.
That sounds terrible, Tom.
How could you not be better prepared?
Oh gosh.
Going into an Olympic event, and he's talking after it about like, yeah, then like we get like everything we need for warming, and like as everything's kind of like thawing out, the pain is unbearable. It's like, you did this once.
Fool me once.
Let it happen
fool me
again?
twice.
Yeah, fool me once. Yeah. Freeze this once. Shame on. Freeze this twice. Shame on me. I don't understand how exactly that would work.
But that was just awful.
That was a fun story that kind of just like, I just had to get a laugh out of it, particularly for this happened to you again.
Wow.
Glad that he's okay.
That sounds awful.
Nothing life-threatening as far as I can tell. Just, a little chilly.
I'll keep my comments to myself. I'll just say that sounds awful. We'll try to preserve the PG-13 nature of our broadcast as much as we can.
Indeed, we will. Well, equally as painful, at least in some aspects. Show is 1-9 on Locks of the Week. Common, want to do the recap?
Yeah, 1-8. We'll
1-8.
One loss less. Brutal week for our Locks of the Week last week. Drew Brackett saved us with one win. So I went with an all-NBA card last week. Failed miserably, 76ers +2 against the Celtics. You know what? They just lost by a lot. We'll leave it at that. Heat -4 against the Mavs. The Mavs winning by 8. I had the Suns -13 over the Clippers. They did win at least, but by just 7. Tom, you had the Suns -7.5 at the half against the Clippers. They were up 6 at the half. You missed that one. This one was one of the bad beats of bad beats on our show. You had Bucks -8.5 first half line against the Pacers. Bucks were up 9 late in the first half. Buddy Hield hits a 3 at the buzzer to get the cover.
34-footer.
34-footer at the buzzer. Buddy Hield looking like his Oklahoma days. Now on the Pacers, no longer a King either. So that's very, very interesting. So you got a bad beat there. And you had Spencer Dinwiddie over 14.5 total points and rebounds. You were wrong. He finished with 11. Drew Brackett did go 1-2. He is first on the season at 56, 43-2. He actually had a bad beat in this game. Oilers Kings under 6.5. It was 5-2 Oilers, 7 total goals, but there was maybe 3 or 4 goals at the intermission of the second period. So there was a bunch of goals scored in the third period that Drew got BBQ'd on. And then he had Champions League soccer, Byron Salzburg, under 3.5 goals. He was right, 2 total goals there. And he went to ATP Qatar Open Tennis, Denis Shapovalov versus Alex Mokhan, over 21.5 total games. There was just 16 total games. I'll give Drew's picks first, then I'll get to you, Tom, and then I'll make my picks after. Drew's rocking with some more tennis. He's not on the show tonight, obviously. He sent us his picks via text. ATP Dubai Tennis Championship on Wednesday. Tomorrow, Novak Djokovic, Karen Khachanov, over 21.5 games. Then Europa League Thursday. He's going with my soccer team, Barcelona. They're playing Napoli. Whoever scores more goals that game is moving on to the next round. Drew's banking on not a lot of goals, under 2.5. It was 1-1 their first meeting last week. Barcelona should have won probably 4 or 5-1, but Ferran Torres couldn't finish to save his life. I mean, it was just a pathetic display of finishing. And then Drew's looking for more bad finishing in the English Premier League. On Friday, he's got Southampton and Norwich City under 2.5 goals, 2 of the lesser teams in the league. Norwich City, though, it has a horrendous defense. So we'll see if they don't give up 3 goals themselves. What do you got, Tom?
Well, I was staring down the barrel of an all NCAA men's basketball card until right before the show, I get to see that Bovada has posted the NBA line. So 3 games on Thursday, folks will actually be able to look ahead to a game that I'm picking now that we are post-NFL, and my same night player props aren't going to be carrying through. So give me the Grizzlies -2 against the Timberwolves. Give me Warriors -6.5 at Portland. And then I'll go ahead and take my Denver Nuggets -4.5 over the Kings.
Okay, I like it. All right, well, hey, I'm going to go with 6.5 on that Warriors line. I've got it at 7, but we'll do wherever you can find it best. I'll go 6.5 Warriors at the Blazers. Talked about it at the start of the show. Curry coming off a 50-point, 15-3 game in the All-Star game. Look for him to stay hot, as the Warriors should cover against a weak Blazers team. No CJ McCollum there anymore. Dame Lillard has been dealing with injuries. I know they do have a young, talented player out there. I think Simmons is pretty good, but I do like the Warriors to cover. They won by double digits in the 2 meetings that the 2 teams played earlier this season. Look for Golden State to win by 7 or more. No problem. Then I'm rolling with the hometown Bulls. Bulls -4 over the Hawks. Chicago won both regular season meetings this season by double digits. Bulls are 23-8 at home. Hawks are just 11-17 on the road. Look for Chicago to win by 5 or more. And then I'm going with some soccer. Champions League soccer on Wednesday. I like Ajax money line. This is moved from anywhere from 120, 125 to 130, -130, that is, just within the bounds. We talked about it before the show. So you're gonna have to pay some money to get this one, but I think it's one that will pay off. Ajax, by the way, was 6-0 in its Champions League group. 6 wins, 0 losses. I know it was a weaker group, but they did beat Borussia Dortmund both times they played, and Dortmund's not a bad team. 18 wins, 3 draws, and 2 losses in the Dutch league this year. So, I mean, they're winning almost all of their matches this season. Home, road, whatever. I know this is a road game, but I think they will beat a lesser Benfica team here. So give me Ajax money line over Benfica. That is them winning. If Benfica ties or wins, obviously I'd lose. Warriors -6.5 over the Blazers. And the hometown Bulls -4 over Trae Young and the Hawks.
All right, looking forward to that, and actually, like far forward, not same night stuff, which is nice and a little bit of a rarity for at least my portion of the show. On to trivia. I don't have anything for sports trivia, but I would be remiss if I did not point out something that's not going to happen again for the next 400 years. Today
Yes,
is Tuesday. We've
indeed.
got February 22nd, the year 2022. It is, and of course, that being a Tuesday. So just one of those weird, fun phenomenons. I mean, who knows if our calendar system's even going to be the same in 400 years from now? This could be the last time, the last opportunity we have for a Tuesday. What a time to be alive.
I
Take
love
that,
it.
ancestors.
I love it, Tom. You would point that out. I mentioned that earlier in the day to my girlfriend, so that is definitely a fun fact. All right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm gonna give you trivia because I don't want to, I know there's one name on here that's completely impossible. So I'm gonna set this up with I'm gonna give you two guys that have done it. So I'll set this up this way.
Okay.
NBA undrafted players to make the All-Star game. Fred VanVleet made the All-Star game this year as an undrafted player, becoming the fifth ever undrafted player to make the All-Star game. I'll give you one of the other five, who's a very hard name. Connie Hawkins was the first, making a record 5 All-Star teams between the 60s and 70s as an undrafted player. So we got Fred VanVleet, we've got Connie Hawkins. Name the other 3 undrafted players to make the All-Star game. One played in the 90s and 2 played in the 2000s. Those are your clues. I think you'll definitely get one of them.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you get the other 2. I think you might get the other 2 with a lot of clues.
So that eliminates Moses Malone because he technically wasn't drafted, but he came over from the ABA. So so he was the first guy. So one played in the 90s and 2 played in the 2000s. I know that this is something obviously people talk about a lot. I'm not going to do well on this at all. I can tell you that right now.
Okay, do you want me to give you the easy clue?
All right, I'll go for the easy clue.
I'll give you the easiest one. This guy is probably, well, I got to look up Connie Hawkins in his resume, but of the other 4 names, this man is probably the most accomplished player of them. Some people on this show or on the internet think he's a Hall of Famer. This guy right here does not think he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, so that's Ben Wallace.
Ben Wallace.
I was not going to guess him.
So Ben Wallace, undrafted, played in only 4 All-Star games, yet we think he's a Hall of Famer, but whatever. That was the second most All-Star games for an undrafted player. I did look this up online, so I'm guessing the Moses Malone distinction that you made is like he started in the ABA. So that obviously, like, I think it's guys that were draft eligible and looking to get drafted or something. Fred
was Peja
VanVleet,
Stojakovic
not
drafted?
Peja.
Okay.
I think Peja was drafted because I think he's made an All-Star team before. But hold on. You're a little warm with this one. This guy was a teammate of Peja Stojakovic's briefly. There's another clue I can give. I can give it away. I can give a clue that might give it away. I'll let you think about this a little bit, but this is a former teammate of Peja Stojakovic that was undrafted and made the All-Star team. He's made 2 All-Star games. 2 All-Star games. One of them was with the Kings. The other was not with the Kings.
I think I remember this one. Brad Miller.
Brad Miller also played with the Bulls. That was my next clue. He made the All-Star team in 02-03 with the Pacers and 03-04 with the Kings.
Okay, so then there's one more.
This guy played in the 90s. A very 90s player. I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised he didn't make more All-Star games. He played in just one All-Star game, but was a player that when you think of 90s basketball, probably one of the first 10 or 15 names I think of 90s basketball. He was a rival with Michael Jordan.
Undrafted rival with Michael Jordan. Oh, yeah, John Starks.
John Starks. Pretty good, Tom. You did pretty good here.
No,
You
well,
thought you
I'll
wouldn't do
I'll
well. You did pretty
confess.
good.
I'll confess, a lot of that is because like leading up to the NBA All-Star Week, like I hear a lot of chatter, I read a lot of stuff about these players. So, like they aren't like top of mind except for the fact that I probably read this stuff a little bit ago.
Yeah.
So
There you
I'll
go.
confess, like it's not truly a great performance trivia wise, to be
Okay.
honest.
That's okay. I think you did okay. I don't think you were going to get Connie Hawkins with any clues.
No, but like when you said the name, I was like, oh yeah, I remember people mentioning him being an
Okay.
undrafted all-star for sure.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, statement and salute time. Do you want to kick it off or you want me to go first?
I'll do a little short salute, then I'll
Sure.
let you get to the nitty gritty stuff. I have a feeling that you might be giving a salute statement that's similar to mine.
Hmm.
I've got a couple things, and there's one that I may or may not talk about because I have a feeling you might talk about it anyways.
Hmm.
But first off, I have this on my Instagram. I just posted it. I think it's on a Facebook story too. I know you're not a big Insta guy, but I
Mhm.
saw this today and I reshared it because I thought it was really cool. So anything is possible. Adonis Lattimore was born without any legs. He has one finger on one of his hands. He won the Virginia 6A 106-pound state championship. Incredibly inspiring. So we had
Wow.
a kid without any legs and only a finger on one of his hands wins the wrestling state championship, I believe, out in Virginia. So I saw that on Sports Center's Instagram. So I thought that was worth sharing. Definitely a pretty cool moment. That's kind of like my sort of like salute, cool moment as opposed to my statement. What do you have for
Absolutely.
statement of the week? I have a few different things for mine. So I want to see maybe
Yeah.
one of the ones that I have might be one that you have.
Well, I'm actually like I'm really intrigued to see what you have because like I kind of just like pulled this one out a little bit over the weekend. For me, NBA is the best league when it comes to connecting its past to its present. We saw that with the 75 anniversary team and everybody that they brought out and they announced. And quite frankly, nobody connects their stars together better than the NBA. You look at players, obviously there's that viral video, Michael Jordan going up and bear hugging Luka Doncic.
I love that.
Awesome, awesome moment. Equally awesome moment where he goes stone cold killer on
On
Magic Johnson
Isaiah.
saying, we can play one-on-one right now. And Magic's laughing and everyone else is laughing. And the great part of that video is like you see Michael, it goes back to Michael and like Michael Jordan dead serious. And you see like a profile of Dwayne Wade's face where he's looking at Magic and you can see on his face where he's like, oh, Michael's dead serious. And just the abs like
Sure.
the love and connection that these guys have. I mean, you look at say like the NFL, you look at the MLB, for whatever, well, not for whatever reason, I'm pretty sure I know like the different reasons. Basketball does the best job of connecting all of its stars because the stars have the biggest impact on the game.
Sure.
Is probably the bigger thing. Like you can have a star first baseman, pitcher, what have you. They don't have the same impact on a game that a star basketball player does. And then of course the visibility. You see everyone's face
There's no
when they're
helmets
playing.
on
There's no
you.
helmet or anything. And then the third thing I think that makes the NBA the most like fun league to watch all in all is that it's the most relatable for people like you and me. Relatively low barrier to entry when you consider the gear and the equipment that you need. If you have sneakers and a Wilson, you can go and you can play basketball with people. You don't need a glove, cleats, a hat, ball,
Large
like
group
all
of
that stuff.
people.
You don't need a large group of people. You can go as little as one-on-one. You could just by
Shoot.
yourself if you want. You could just shoot around if you want to.
Sure.
That's one of my favorite things to do. So that's why I think like NBA is the best league. Of course, we all worship at the altar of football, so to speak, of the NFL. But look at what the trade deadline did for the NBA. They were still competing for clicks with the Super Bowl, with that big, massive deadline deal. I talked about it last week with the drama that comes with draft. Everybody pays attention. Free agency. People are really excited for free agency and all the different trades. And then just the interplayer drama. Players are more connected with fans now than they ever have been. And so we actually get to see, to our delight, a lot of the pettiness that goes on with these players. Kevin Durant just
Burner
stone
account.
face saying, I'm picking Rudy Gobert over James Harden. Like, and not even like messing around about it. Like, that's why for me, like NBA is the best league. It does the best job of just connecting all the dots and being a really fun fan experience. Even though, NFL, of course, is a great, great product and drives a lot as well. But just like basketball just like connects a bit better because it is so accessible and its stars are so relatable, much more so than you see in the NFL. Especially when you look at some of the retired NFL players and like their bodies are honestly broken because
Yeah.
that's the game that they play, as opposed to like we still can look at a very ambulatory Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, guys that played decades and decades ago, and we can still connect them and say, hey, that's greatness, and they still look like good for their age type of thing, as opposed to football players that really aren't as mobile, aren't as like fun to reminisce about because of the meat grinder the NFL is. So that's what my statement is, kind of broad strokes, is NBA is just the best league for a lot of great reasons.
Yeah, I like more or less agree. I think it's run the best. I think
Oh,
like
absolutely,
the
yeah.
connections that the players make, I 100% agree with you. I don't know if I like it better or not than the NFL. I love both. I think it's a very
Mhm.
different argument. I do think the NFL has that edge of the fact that there's less games and you feel like you have to
Yes,
watch more
scarcity.
games.
Hmm.
That's something that the NBA will never be able to touch. I think,
Easier to bet
re-
on.
yeah, I think that too. But I think regular season NFL is more captivating than regular season NBA. I think they're both captivating. I
Hmm.
think the NBA does a better job of like its big events, like the trade deadline, the All-Star games, and even honestly the marketing for the finals. I mean, I know the Super
Yeah.
Bowl, because of the Super Bowl, is great. I think the NBA is the best run league. I don't know if I can say it's the best overall league. I go back and forth. I think NFL and NBA to me are both like neck and neck.
Sure.
And I obviously, me, I love Champions League soccer too. So that's got to
Yeah,
be
if you're
uh,
going
in
global,
in
absolutely.
in that debate. I think I'll say this: MLB definitely growing up, MLB might have been my favorite, but MLB has definitely gone downhill over the years, and we'll see
Hmm.
if it's even going to be happening. That's its own storyline right there. But yeah, I think you bring up some good points. I do think like in basketball, there's only five guys in the court, and there's so many like guys in basketball that are so recognizable. Like a guy
Hmm.
like John Starks too. I think of him like I can picture his face right now, and he was not like a star per se in the '90s, but he's like a guy that you just know. And I think it is really cool seeing the legends connecting with each other. We definitely don't see that in other sports nearly as much. So that's definitely a pretty good statement. I had a few things, and most of them are NBA related as well. One that I thought maybe you might bring up, but maybe you were busy at work and didn't see it today. And this is actually a little bit more controversial issue, but I think it would be bad if we don't at least mention it. I think I'd
Hmm.
have to look more into it. This news literally broke about 30 minutes, maybe an hour before our show started, and I was doing a few other things. So definitely want to read more into the specifics before I give like a 100% stance. But the U.S. women's national soccer team has won the battle to get
Hmm.
equal pay with the U.S. men's soccer team. I think on the surface, it sounds like something good. It sounds like a positive step in the right direction. It is definitely a complicated issue because obviously the American women's soccer team is significantly more successful than the men's soccer team, having won multiple World Cups, being ranked number one in the world. The men's team has never won the World Cup. They've never been ranked number one in the world. With that said, I think there are a lot of like opponents and sheer games that the U.S. men's team can generate a lot of excitement and revenue by playing a Brazil or a Germany. Whereas when the U.S. ladies play one of those top teams, it's not as much of a draw. So it's a very complicated issue. I know it's not as simple as it may seem, but there definitely does seem like there have been some inequalities and some things that haven't been favorable. So on the
Hmm.
surface, it does seem like a positive move. I'll say this though: the U.S. ladies soccer team for years has already gotten a lot more finances and love than other women's soccer teams across the world. So that would be the thing that is a positive step for America. But let's see what what it does for the rest of the world. But I have several statements surrounding the NBA. One of them was kind of a brief salute, so I won't really have very much on this because you kind of covered it. But I do think all those legends getting back together and seeing each other and meeting the new guys was really, really cool. Secondly, I talked about both of these things earlier in the show, but I think we saw on All-Star Weekend that LeBron James and Stephen Curry are the two faces of the NBA. I don't know, like LeBron's a little bit more of a face, but it's like 1 and 1A. And as talented as Kevin Durant is, and I think Kevin Durant is probably the most talented player in the league. I mean, maybe LeBron overall, but Durant is either the most or second most talented. I don't know if that means that he's necessarily the best, though. I can actually argue that Curry might be better than him, even though he's not as talented. But no matter what Kevin Durant does, he will never be as popular as LeBron and Curry. And as likable and as great as Giannis is, he's still not at their level. We saw Stephen Curry put on a show, and what do kids do these days growing up? They want to shoot the three ball like Stephen Curry, and they want to dunk the ball like LeBron James. Those are the two faces of the NBA. Curry dropping 50 points, LeBron dropping the game winner. I thought NBA All-Star Weekend was kind of symbolic of who the biggest guys in the NBA are. And I think they're so popular for different reasons. I think like LeBron, I think is such a big deal because people either like love to hate him or love to love him. And I think he's got that classic story of having so much pressure on him from a young age, so much expectations. And LeBron has exceeded the expectations, which is like those people that love him will say the amount of pressure he's had, it's unbelievable what he's achieved. And those people that hate him will say, well, he was supposed to do this, so it's just, he is just such a character. And for the most part, I think he's a misunderstood player. I think he's a great teammate. He's done a lot of stuff off the field. LeBron is still a human being, though. Every once in a while, he does say something that might rub you the wrong way. And even as a LeBron fan, yeah, he makes mistakes sometimes. And that's what happens when you're in the modern day, like when you got the camera in your face constantly 24/7, 365. But I thought that LeBron and Durant did what they did All-Star Weekend. Those are my two faces. And my other statement was, Curry stole the show, but I couldn't help but watching that All-Star game and hearing all that LeBron said and seeing him with the legends and just everything. It's just like LeBron James is going to be a legend of the game for years to come. He's 5-0. I know it's the All-Star game. I know it doesn't sound like anything that impressive, but his team LeBron is 5-0. And I think he takes pride in that. He likes winning. He does a great job of picking the right players, as he does with some of his super teams. He knows how to build a team. He knows how to win. And my statement is that whether he's going to be a coach, whether he's going to be a GM, whether he's going to be an owner, or all of the above, don't be too crazy like Jerry Jones, though, so be careful. But whatever LeBron James chooses to do in the game of basketball, he's going to be absolutely great at it. He has a mind and a knack for basketball. He really understands it. He's got great IQ, and he's a great businessman. He's done really good stuff off the field, both in his own business ventures, also with charity and stuff. He's done acting. Like, his acting game could use a little work, but his ability to promote himself and to, be on top in many areas is very, very impressive. And I think as great as Michael Jordan is, we've seen Michael Jordan as an executive. We've seen him as a GM. We've seen him as an owner, and Jordan has been terrible. And honestly, I don't think Jordan would be able to relate to the players. Like, he is one of those guys that was amazing on the court, and that's about it. Like, I think LeBron is going to be he's going to be like Larry Bird. This was a trivia question that I thought about dropping this week too, Tom, but I felt that you would get it. Larry Bird is like the only guy to be named like MVP, Player of the Year, also Executive of the Year, and Coach of the Year. So Larry Bird has succeeded in all three venues in the future, and I think LeBron is going to be like a Larry Bird. Pat Riley, obviously not as great as a player, but Pat Riley is known as an executive and a coach and was a player also. He's going to be like a Larry Bird, a Jerry West, a Pat Riley, that type of guy who if he chooses to be. Now, he could choose to not do basketball, but my gut is that he's going to choose basketball, and he's going to be a name that's going to be great, and he's going to be synonymous with the NBA, barring health, and obviously nothing crazy happening. We saw what happened with Kobe was tragic, but barring anything crazy like that, he's going to be a huge name in the game of basketball for the next 40 or 50 years, just like the way Jordan is today. I think there's going to be kids who will have never seen LeBron, but they'll appreciate him and know who he is.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, good show, Tom. I had a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
We got carried away, had a good time, but that's great. Gotta love the good chatter. Drew Brackett's not here to keep us in line, so that's fine. Get our chatter rolling, me especially. I like to chatter. But looking forward to a fun show next week. I think the conference tournaments start next week. It is the lower level conference tournaments. And then the more Power 5 conferences are the week after. But I think we're going to do something with college basketball starting next week. Maybe it'll be something brief in terms of what lower level teams we're looking at. But my thought is that we'll have probably college basketball talk for about the next 6 weeks. So I know I mentioned it last week, but if you want to study up, now is the time to do it, because we will have a lot of college hoops coming up and a lot of NBA. We'll talk a little bit about the NFL Combine next week. I was actually planning on mentioning it this week. There was like a boycott. The players, there was COVID regulations, and the players said that they are not in favor of them. And then the NFL bended to the players. So looks like the Combine will go on as normal. But we'll probably talk about that next week as well. But nonetheless, a lot of good stuff coming up in the weeks to come. Definitely basketball is going to be the heavy talking point now, with no NFL and who knows, no MLB in near sight.
Yeah, we'll keep everyone apprised of that. Just 19 days until Selection Sunday. So definitely going to do a reset on college hoops next week. So yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, Tom, we'll see you next week. Thank you for everyone for watching and listening. We appreciate all you guys. You guys are what makes this fun. And again, thankful to be doing the show. We did this college radio show together in up until 2012 or 2013. I believe it was our last year doing the show. Good to reunite this. Started in 2020, still in 2022, going strong and having a great time. Have a good one.